Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Charles from the channel Book on Stereo, and I'm here to bring you guys a really amazing special interview to me. I have the Rosie Danan, who is author of The Roommate and the recent release, The Intimacy Experiment, featuring one of my favorite characters. So thank you so much, Rosie, for coming on my channel. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing good. It's Sunday, but I'm kind of fighting off the Sunday scaries, if you will, going back to the work
Mm,
week.
I
So
can
yeah,
imagine.
excited to be here.
And how are you doing? Because the Intimacy Experiment just released last Tuesday. How's the release week been for you?
Good. It's like a
Right.
whirlwind. This is my second pandemic book, so it's a little bit different. Obviously, you can't have
Mhm.
like big events with a lot of people and stuff, but I've been able to kind of celebrate with my immediate family, which has been really nice, and people online have been super supportive. So yeah, I'm feeling really good. Thank you.
That's good. And the first question I wanted to ask you is how did you get into writing romance in general? Were you always a romance reader?
Yes, I have been a romance reader as long as I can remember, picking up books. Started with kind of like middle grade with romantic elements. Ella Enchanted is
Hmm.
still like one of my favorite books to this day.
Such a good. Do you prefer the book or the movie? I heard they're very different.
Definitely the book. No shade
Okay,
against
I'm a
anyone
movie
who
stan.
it's a good movie. I think it's like I read the book when I was really young and you get like really attached to the way things are done and then the movie
Mhm.
um takes some artistic license, but both great in their own right. Um so yeah, I've just been always reading romance. I don't think I knew that romance had like was a distinct genre until I was a bit older. But I loved Regencies. That was kind of my first introduction. And
Mhm.
then, definitely have expanded into all the different subgenres at this point. And then I started writing basically because I was so obsessed with romance novels that I was like, I
Mhm.
feel like the way for me to get deeper into the romance novel is just to write one so I can be like more immersed in the romance.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what got me started.
And that's amazing because like even like you're deep diving into romance now that you're writing romance books, but you write like way deep into the romance genre with sex workers. In The Roommate, you have a porn star, and Noemi is a I guess like you can call it ex porn star kind of. And it's like book she
Yeah.
takes on a little bit different role, but like when The Roommate first came out, I was like, whoa. What's the premise of this book again? A roommate like a wealthy, kind of well-to-do girl, and like she gets stuck with like a porn star, like a very popular porn star. I was like, I didn't know I needed this. And then like it's not just there for the gimmick, but you actually go into what it is like to be a sex worker, and you bring humility and dignity to it. So I wanted to know, where did the like beginnings of the story start for you? Was it something you always wanted to write about?
So I actually mentioned my love for Regencies, and that's where the idea, it doesn't sound maybe super logical, but that's actually where the idea for the roommate came from originally, because in historicals, one of my favorite tropes is lessons in seduction between a rake and a blue stocking.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that trope. I've always found it really fun. So I wanted to update that for a contemporary setting. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
that an interesting evolution of the rake archetype, who's this hero that's very confident and sexually experienced, would be a porn star. And obviously that has all of its own connotations, and I knew that I would have to be really like doing my due diligence in terms of representing the industry accurately and sensitively. But that was
Mm-hmm.
something that I found I was able to do by diving into materials of people who have lived experience in the industry and actually working with a subject matter expert who is a current performer. And it was a lot for me to learn as well, but it was
Mm-hmm.
really a fun process.
Yeah, and how long did you take to research like just the profession in general before you started writing The Roommate? Was it not too long a period, or you kind of just like research
Um,
as you went as you were
I
writing
mean,
the book?
the process of writing The Roommate was very extended because I wasn't necessarily like working towards publication. So I
Mm-hmm.
kind of wrote it on and off over the course of a few years. But I would say across the entire process, I was referencing different materials to stay on top of different facets of the industry and the
Mm-hmm.
experiences of people in it. So Yeah, I don't know that I could quantify it in like a set number of hours, but it wasn't like, let me do all the research up front. It was very much as I was writing, referencing different materials or asking questions. And as
Mhm.
I mentioned, I had someone who was reviewing the manuscript and giving me feedback so I could make adjustments to make it more accurate. So
Mhm.
it was very much a ongoing part of doing the work of the book.
Mhm. And now that you say that, I was curious. What did you ever do? You ever think about maybe going back and writing a historical version of The Roommate almost?
Oh,
Since
that's
it
such
kind
a
of started
fun
out there, would you ever
question.
go back to writing historical? Since I didn't even realize like I know that trope from historicals, but I didn't see the correlation. I was like, oh, how did she come up with this idea? That's cool that you went to
Yeah,
historicals. I was wondering, would you ever go back to historicals and
I
like write
don't
in that
know.
genre?
Never say never for sure, because I think writing is so such like an emotional process. You kind of have to like follow
Hmm.
your heart. That sounds cheesy, but you chase the
Yeah.
ideas that are like of the moment for you.
Hmm.
And you know, so maybe someday, although I do really like kind of keeping it separate, that my love for Regency is because something that's complicated when you become a writer is you start to read differently in your own
Hmm.
subgenre, at least in my experience.
Hmm.
Like it's hard now when I read a great contemporary to not have like a little voice in my head that's like comparing myself or something. And right now I
Yeah.
can keep Regencies out of that, which would be great to kind of maintain potentially. So yeah, you
Hmm.
never know, but it's not on my like immediate to-do list.
Hmm. And one of the things that was really interesting in the roommate is that they create almost like a company of sorts to like better teach people to be more in touch with their own sexuality, actually
Mm-hmm.
start to flip the industry and make it more just not for, because I know that there's been tons of studies like how online porn has been like ruining like kind of like what normal like especially younger people like what they kind of think and what they kind of expect when they
Yeah.
start engaging in sex. So I wonder, was that idea already like kind of like you already knew that you were going to go there with that plot, or you just had the setup and then like that came through as you were writing the book?
I think that I always knew that I wanted them to form some kind of company and I wanted it to be
Hmm.
geared towards sex education. And I wanted it to be a place where the sex workers who, including Josh and Naomi, who like were not being treated very well by the sector of the industry
Hmm.
that they were in, could still find employment without having to necessarily leave sex work entirely. And um, so it was more about like pulling out the details of it. What would it look like? How would Clara be
Hmm.
involved? But I think I always knew that that was going to be like both a complicating element and something that brought Josh and Clara together. It was pretty like essential to
Hmm.
the core of the plot when I had the idea.
Hmm. And just talking about Clara's character a little bit, I really, really enjoyed her character. I think, especially the way she got into the situation, I like how she realizes that. Because I've seen some critiques where they say like, "Oh my goodness, she has all these degrees, but yet she just like decides to just drop everything and move into this random apartment just so she can like have it like a maybe at a chance with this boy that she has had a crush on forever, but
Yeah.
they never actually talked about it." I like how she herself goes like, yeah, I know it's dumb, but like, have you ever done anything for love? So I like how we got to see a very strong, powerful, very intellectual woman just go like, just like do something of the women and be normalized a little bit, and not have her punished or be like seen like as a ditzy heroine that just happens to have all these degrees because she's rich. Like, how did you kind of approach her character a little bit, and were there any inspirations that you drew from when writing Clara?
Yeah. I mean, to me, um Clara very much has like used her advanced degree, and I think a lot of this is on the page, like things that she admits
Hmm.
through her own voice in the story. But she has been in these, she's gotten her doctorate because she was afraid to go out into the real world, because she says like, I wanted to
Hmm.
extend the exit ramp to adulthood. So, and I know a lot of people who are, don't necessarily apply their degree exactly when they get out of school. Like
Hmm.
you kind of you're finding your footing in a lot of times.
Hmm.
So to me, that, I think that made a lot of sense for her character. And then yeah, exactly what you said. She admits that it's goofy, but I think most of us, I would hope, because honestly, I think this is one of the best parts of being in love, is
Hmm.
sometimes like love overrides your better judgment, and
Hmm.
taking risks for love is something that I really support, and I've done things like that. So yeah, again, maybe not everyone would do what she did in that circumstance, but I think
Hmm.
it I'm really proud of her for taking a risk. Like, I think it wouldn't have been a
Yeah, me
very
too.
good story if she just, went and worked at the Guggenheim or
Hmm.
whatever.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm curious when you set out to write a romance, do you have to know, especially for Clara and Josh, because they're so different, come from such different worlds? Did you already have to know the characters before you started working on their romance? Or were you, as you're kind of writing, you kind of figured out what beats, where you needed things to land to like build a convincing couple? Because one thing that I love about romance and one of the things that you do really well in your books is that you make the reader understand like why these two characters work together. Not just like, oh, they're shoved in a room, so of course they're gonna have chemistry because one of them is a porn star. But no, there actually is more to that and there's more character development. So like when you do get to those steamy moments, they feel earned, and you feel like they're actually furthering the character development. So I was wondering when you were writing that, were you conscious of that, or did you kind of plot out where you wanted them to go throughout the novel?
It's funny. I don't know if it's because Josh and Clara were my first set of characters or because I worked the longest on their book, but I feel like I had a very firm idea of their characters when I started, and also how they would play off one another. So, like, Josh and Clara are very much by design sort of complementary in that, like, he's strong in ways that she struggles, and vice versa. I will say, like, working on the intimacy experiment and like other projects that I've done, I don't always feel that I know the characters as well. And I have to spend more time in the drafting process, just letting them come out on the page. Or sometimes I'll do a journaling exercise where I try to write in first person in the voice of the character to try to get into their head a bit. So yeah, I think sometimes it varies, but for Josh and Clara, have always been very distinct in my mind for some reason.
Yeah, that's because I love these two characters, but like the character that stole my heart was Naomi. Like when she came on the page, I was like, I can see why she ended things with you, Josh. I'm like, she's in a whole another level. I like how she goes like, you know what? Don't sleep with Clara. She's like, I know you want to. He's like, how do you know? Like, she's like I know you. I love her character. So I was wondering when you initially finished the roommate, were you always intending to write a spin-off book for Naomi?
I think yes.
Okay.
I will say this is I honestly feel goofy every time I say this, but it's true. Like, a little intimidated by her myself, like as a character. And I was a little nervous to like get in her head because obviously in the
Mhm.
roommate she's like a not a POV character.
Mhm.
But she always, again, like, I guess similar to Clara and Josh, like Naomi was always very three-dimensional in my mind. I really felt like I knew
Mhm.
her and I knew what she wanted and how she guarded herself from people. And I definitely always knew, like, this is someone I want to have love in her life. And I knew
Mhm.
obviously that Josh was not the
Yeah.
person for her.
Mhm.
Although I love writing them together, I think like they have a friendship that comes out of their time together that makes me really happy. So yeah, I am very fond of her as well.
And I just loved her dynamic with Clara because like it could have easily gone down that like trope that you see in a lot of romances where the ex-girlfriend and the current girlfriend are like at each other's throats. I'm like, I slept with Josh, and I like Naomi was just like, yeah, I don't want Josh. You can have him. You guys work together. I'm gonna go focus on this, and like that's just a great segue into the intimacy experiment. The premise of this book, I was like, Rosie, like what?
Again, what's
I
happening?
was
Yeah,
like,
I know.
so when I heard the pitch for the book, I was like, and a rabbi? I'm like, wait, what? I was like, can they? I
She's
was
at it
like, how's this
again.
gonna
Yeah,
work?
I know.
So where did that idea? Like, I feel like is even crazier set up than the roommate. I was like, how does this
Yeah.
work?
Yeah, I keep getting myself into these situations where the pitch is just like bananas. Um, so with Naomi, After it was actually when we were in acquisitions for the roommate with my publisher Berkeley, and
Mhm.
they were like, we're really excited about the roommate, we would love to hear if there could be other books in this series, so can you please put together like a paragraph or two about what you imagine other books in the Shameless world would look like.
Mhm.
And I had not thought of it at that point, so I had like 2 days maybe to
Oh
figure out like
wow.
what the whole book would be. And I originally talked to my agent and was like, I think Naomi should be book 3 because, like I told you, I was intimidated. I wasn't ready to like dive into her story. And my agent was like, "No, people like
I was like,
Naomi,
I
so
was like, I like Naomi. Like, she has to. Her book has to be next.
that's pretty much what the sentiment was." So I was like, "Okay." So then I was like sitting trying to figure out like who her person was, like who name would complement Naomi, and kind of in that way that I talked about with Clara and Josh, where I felt
Mhm.
like I find myself often writing characters who do not maybe look like they would make a lot of sense on paper, but
Mhm.
then find some way to be right for each other. So I thought that it would be interesting to do a rabbi, and it made a lot of sense to me because
It
I
did.
I wanted somebody that had similar values to Naomi,
Mhm.
and she is really community oriented. She really cares about building a safe space for people, building a community that can be transformative and drive good in the world. So you can kind of see a parallel between her and Ethan there. I knew that she would need somebody that wouldn't mind her like being really opinionated and kind of like
Mhm.
forceful. And rabbis are really used to questioning, like that's like a core part of being a rabbi is like analysis and
Mhm.
discussion and compromise and all of that. So I thought that it just really lined up. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I pitched the idea first to my family, who was like, what?
What?
And it's actually a funny story. Like my family was like, well, why don't we email our rabbi and see what he has to say about
Mhm.
this, if it's okay? And he
Mhm.
came back and was like, who are we to stand in the way of love? Gave the green light. And so then I
Oh
took it to my
wow.
editor and she was like, yeah, let's do it.
Wow. Because like on premise, I was like, is Rosie kind of going like the taboo route in this book? But then you're reading, you're like, oh no, 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 no. Like it actually makes a lot of sense. And one of the things I was a little bit surprised by was Naomi's character getting to spend more time with her because in the roommate I had one opinion of her just being like this one note kind of badass,
Right.
doesn't take any shit. Like she's kind of like in her own lane and you never see a lot of vulnerability from her. If
Mm-hmm.
she does is like very much guarded and closed off. So like when seeing her open up a little bit, I was like, oh, this book played out a little bit differently than I thought it would be. Because like you get in her head and like through the seminars that she teaches, like you get to see her own insecurities. So I was wondering when you're exploring this character, you're like, it's like almost peeling back layers of an onion with
Yeah.
Naomi. Was that like some of the things that you discovered while writing her? Did that surprise you a little bit? Some of the things you discovered about her vulnerabilities?
I mean, I think that I always knew that she had these vulnerabilities. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think that the romance genre can be really hard on heroines in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was nervous about having so much vulnerability in Naomi's story because I think a lot of people did like her hardness, like her badassery,
Mm-hmm.
if you will, in the roommate. And I wanted to make sure that it was really clear that like being vulnerable and being a badass are not mutually exclusive. Like sometimes they are
Mm-hmm.
actually cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
um so yeah, I wouldn't say that there was like a scene that really surprised me necessarily. Maybe that's just
Mm-hmm.
because being the writer, I had to spend a lot of time with that
You
book. But
are.
um it was always just about like how can I find different ways to share this and how can I show her growth
Mhm,
in different scenarios.
mhm. Yeah, that's really interesting because, like I said, like I had like just like one opinion of her, and then when I thought the book was gonna play out completely different, and I completely agree with your critique on how romance can be harder on the heroines because I'm kind of culpable with this when I think I read a book with a very strong heroine, and one of my complaints was that was mirrored by other readers too. Was like she wasn't vulnerable enough. Like
Mm,
everything was just like one note throughout the entire book. So I was
mm.
like, when you said that, I was like, I kind of realized that like I already had a lot of preconceived notions about what Naomi's book was going to be like, and I still loved what we got, but I was like, oh, like she still is vulnerable, especially the classes that she was teaching. I'm like, can I sign up for one of those? I love the interjection of faith and sex and how they can both intertwine and are not mutually exclusive. Was that something that you really wanted to include in the book? Because I definitely think that just based on whatever religion you do come from, sometimes talking about sex or being in touch with your sexuality is a little bit like no, no,
Yeah. You know, it's
yeah,
funny. I would definitely say that examining the intersections of different identities was at the
hmm
core of wanting to tell this story. Definitely like one of my main motivating factors. And, you know, that is about like how does my professional self interact with my dating self, interact with my
hmm
religious self, or we have all of these different facets of who we are. And obviously can't speak for everyone, but in my own experience I do find myself presenting a different side depending on the
hmm
situation. And I think especially when you're going through these big moments of transition in your life, you start to ask yourself, like, how do I reconcile this? How do I reconcile who I've been with who I want to be? How do I get there? And
hmm
that's very much what these characters are asking themselves. Um, and it's interesting. I think a lot of people came in to both the roommate and the intimacy experiment thinking that it was going to be different than it was
hmm
because of the way we view sex workers, the way we view rabbis in this case. But I will say that the relationship between sex and the practice of Judaism is very different than the relationship between sex and a lot of Christian religions, where there is a lot more of a taboo around intercourse or
hmm
physical intimacy in general. And Judaism, one of the reasons I wanted to tell this story is I wanted to share with people some of the ways that Judaism encourages intimacy inclusive of sex. And
hmm
yeah, I think a lot of people have maybe thought that, a rabbi couldn't have sex, like a priest, if
hmm
that's like their pop
That's what
culture
I thought too. I was
mainstream.
like, wait. I was like, how is this gonna work, Rosie? I'm like,
Yeah.
when she said it too, I was like, I thought that too. So I was like, I thought this was a non-starter until he got
Yeah.
married.
Yeah, but and that's why there are scenes in the book that kind of like just address that
hmm
outright so that there's no confusion. And that again, like I don't know that people necessarily expect to like learn about Judaism in a romance novel, but I think it's not bad if you get an entertaining story and you learn a little bit
hmm
about a different cultural perspective as well.
Yeah, it was so interesting too, watching Naomi kind of navigate her relationship with Ethan. I was kind of like, it was really almost a little bit more on her, kind of like her hesitancy of like jumping in. Ethan's like, I'm ready. Like, let's make this happen. Like, just because I'm a rabbi doesn't mean like we can't get to the steam. I love
Right.
how she was in her head, like it was like so much like almost like a little bit unconditioning of what like people expected from her. And I think that's like a really great commentary on like society's expectations on women, especially sex worker women. There's this specific scene in the book where I think one of the people in her class basically harasses her and is like, "Let me show you." I think I can't remember exactly what, but I remember she punches the guy. And I was like, I love that. And so, like, was that something you really wanted to hone on in this book as well? Because I definitely think the treatment between male and female sex workers is a little bit different. And did you want to explore that dichotomy a little bit more in the intimacy experiment?
Yeah, absolutely. The experiences of a male adult performer versus a female adult performer tends to vary a lot. And I knew that that was
Mm-hmm,
something that I was going to have to address in this book because, we heard Josh's experiences. We hear a little about Naomi and some of the other people's experiences
mm-hmm,
in the roommate. But being in Naomi's POV, I wanted to, be accurate to some of the experiences, both positive and negative, that she has had because of her history with sex work, as well as, currently building a community that primarily employs sex workers at Shameless. And unfortunately, yes, harassment is something that I think a lot of people have dealt with, not just sex workers, not just women. We definitely have a problem being a patriarchal society. People feel like they're entitled to touch you. It's like a whole thing. But yeah, I thought it was important for her to have agency in that scene. And I liked the idea of both her and Ethan. You could see, compare and contrast how they handled the conflict. They're both really upset by the behavior of the person in that scene, but they don't necessarily tackle it in the same way.
The same way. I was like,
slightly different.
See, like this is why I love Naomi. Like she was like, I'm just gonna punch the dude.
Yeah.
And I was like,
she's like,
I
this guy
love
needs
her.
to
Like
get punched.
I love her so much. Like she's probably like, as soon as she came on the page in the roommate, I was like, hold up, I like you, Clara, but what's her story? Like I need more from her. I'm like, she's so interesting. But it's curious that you said that you maybe wanted to push her Naomi's book out to like the next book. So who would have been book 2 for you?
This is so funny. You're actually the first person to ask me this, and it is interesting. But if you read The Roommate, you can still find like the Easter egg of this scene. Basically, there's a character that gets introduced named Wynn, and she's like blink and you miss her. You'll have to like really go back and like search for this name, but Wynn, and she is Naomi's best friend from Boston, where they're from, and she is helping Josh and Clara like build the sets for Shameless, and she's like on page for like maybe 3 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, I remember her. She
Yeah, so
would have
she
been the
was gonna
next
have a
book.
book, yeah, which would have been extremely different. And I don't know that we'll necessarily ever get that story. Maybe it'll be like an indie release or something. But yeah, that's the fun fact there.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm glad we got Naomi's book because, like, if it was Win, I'd be like, "Who's Win again?"
You'd be like,
I have to
what?
go
Yeah,
back and
I
read the
know, I
roommate.
know. I think
I
it
was
was
so curious. I was like, who was gonna be the next book?
I know
Like,
it very much would have been I think going with Naomi was the right call. I was like, when when you're, I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but like you are trying to do something because you're afraid. You're like, well, what if I just do this? Is this gonna work? And then
yeah,
everyone's like, no. So yeah.
yeah. I just saw Naomi. I was like, "Ooh, her book is gonna be hard." And I was like,
It was hard.
she's a character, like, because you can either go like the one note and make her just like a badass. Like I had a completely different trajectory when I was reading the book. I'm like, okay, this is gonna happen, and this is gonna happen. I was like, wait. Rosie's giving me something completely different,
That's
but I'm
so
loving every second
interesting.
of it. Like I think it was more kind of tapping into my indie brain with some
Okay,
of the
I'm so
premises. I'm like,
curious. Like,
okay.
what were you thinking? Like, is there anything that you can remember thinking that I should know about?
I was think when I first heard the premise, I was like, okay, we have a sex worker and a rabbi. So I immediately went to like the priest by Sierra Simone and
Oh,
like that
okay.
taboo.
That's a
So it was like
little,
in my mind.
yeah, that's a lot. That's a
So like my
great
mind
book,
went
but
to
that's a
that,
lot.
and then I
Okay.
started reading the book. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
I
I
was like,
can't.
because like my indie brain like works by tropes. So like I hear because some things with like indie books, like you can hear certain tropes and you're like, okay, this is how it's gonna play out. And like I love in your books that you do get that really amazing romance, you get that nice amount of steam, but you also get a lot of knowledge that you impart on the reader, and it's not ever like you're hitting people over the head trying to like give them this knowledge. It's kind of like just casually brought up throughout the plot, and you're like, oh wait, I didn't think of sex workers in the best of light. Sometimes like this
Sure.
book really kind of like it kind of just smashed the patriarchy. Like I find these books like just like a kick in the gut for like all romance readers. I'm like, wait. I was like, because you give us all this great stuff, but you give us this really nice commentary on society and like sex workers and some of the realities of what being a sex worker is, and then you also give us really fully dimensional characters that make mistakes, but they're not always perfect, but they show their vulnerabilities. I was like, you're like operating like I'm like my brain is like exploding when I'm reading your books. I'm just like, I can't believe that you pulled off the intimacy experiment because I was just like, I need to know how this romance would work because I was like, this is like so random. I was like, I would never have thought Naomi would have done this. I was like, maybe like she like her and Clara have a thing, and then they become like, yeah. I was like, what? I was like, I did not even know where this book was going to go, and I think it's just a testament how strong you are as a writer. I was like, I trust you. So you
That's
could just
very
give me like a
nice.
bonkers premise. I was like, Rosie's gonna handle it, and then she's gonna give us some knowledge on top of that while smashing down the patriarchy as well. Because like you have such strong female characters, and I love them so much. And you have male characters that don't feel threatened or weakened by the
That's
characters. Like
very
especially with
sweet.
Clara, she funds the whole company, and like that can create some kind of like awkward dynamics. And you have Naomi, who is such a strong and powerful character, and Ethan is strong and powerful in his own right. But he's like, I really like you, and like we don't have like just because you shine bright doesn't mean like I have to shine brighter. And I love that how you balance in his books. Like you give us kind of like Josh has a little bit of his alpha tendencies,
Yeah.
but like they're balanced so well. I was like, I don't know how do you do it. Like I'm just so in awe of your books. Like I'm just like, how do you do this, Rosie? Like let me know the secret. Like I just need to peer into your mind, like see how it works in your mind when you construct these books.
If you figure it out, please let me know because I'm working on my third book and it's again, I'm like, what is this premise? What did you get yourself into, you weirdo? So
Oh,
yeah.
now I need to know. Can you tell us anything about your third book?
I will.
Any
I'm
like
like
little secrets?
I'm like not good at pitching it to be honest yet. Um so it's basically like, have you ever seen Practical Magic?
Yes.
It's like
Hmm.
Practical Magic without the magic. So
Okay.
I'll back up a little. It's about two best friends, and
Hmm.
they own a bed and breakfast, and they may or may not have accidentally killed someone, and there may or may not be a body in the backyard of the bed and breakfast. And a hot private investigator just checked in, and so they're kind of trying to figure out like how do they keep this potential alleged
Hmm.
secret while also potentially going after this inheritance that they've just found out about. So it's a lot of hijinks, a lot of hijinks.
Ooh, I'm
It's
getting
very
Minaj
different.
vibes. Am I getting Minaj vibes from it? Like, is that
I
where we're going?
I don't think so. I mean, TBD, because I'm
Okay.
still drafting it, still writing it. So you never know what those crazy kids are going to get up to. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be they each find their own person.
Okay. When I heard two
Yes.
best friends and one guy, I was like, is this
I think
Minaj?
my editor would not be down for that, but you never know. So yeah, but honestly, it was really, I love writing friendship as well as romantic
Hmm.
relationships. So this is, I this book will definitely have like really strong female friendship, and I'm really
Hmm.
looking forward to that.
Oh, that sounds so. Is it so? Is it in the same universe as the roommate, or
No,
is this a
it has
completely separate? There's nothing
nothing
to
to
do
do
with.
it.
Oh, I was
I
like,
know.
is like Naomi gonna show up and like help them bury the body or something?
She would be good at that, but no.
She'd be like really down for that. Like, I could
She'd be
totally
like,
see that
"Here's what we're
happen.
gonna do." Yeah. But no, I'm excited to try something completely different, and
Hmm.
also really nervous about it. But that's how I felt about writing always. So
Hmm.
that's all I know.
Oh, that's so cool. Because I was like wondering, like in the shameless world, I was like, what character would she write from at this point? Like, there
Yeah.
isn't like a character that pops out to me that I'm like, okay, that they definitely need a book.
Yeah.
Which is like, I feel like in romance, like any side character that gets brought up, they're like, you need a book, you need a book. Okay, now your kids need a book. We'll do a whole
Yes.
second generation.
Yes.
So is it just gonna be one book or a two book series as well?
A little TBD. I sold two books
Hmm.
to Berkeley, but I we have not figured out yet whether it'll be a duology again or if it'll be
Hmm.
two standalones. So sort of early in the process.
Oh, that's so cool. I feel like I just got like secret knowledge. And when are
Yeah.
these tentatively? When do you think?
Uh
So like next year we should expect the first
yeah,
book?
so September 2022 for the third book.
That's so far away, Rosie. Like
I know.
I don't
Well,
have
it
any other
actually
books to
doesn't
read by you.
it doesn't feel far away to me. It feels really close because I have not written this book yet. But yeah, I know. I'm sure once I turn it in, I'll be like, oh man, I like have to wait. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm sure I could get into some trouble in other ways before that. So stay tuned.
Oh, that's so cool. I would like the way you described it. I was like, I get it. Like I like where you're going with this when you say practical magic without the magic. So like, that brings me
Right.
to a really interesting question. Would you do any other types of subgenres within romance? Would you kind of touch paranormal, historical, romantic suspense? Go into deep into the LGBTQ side of things. Like, where do you think you would dabble in other genres?
I would love to. I don't know. Like I said, I'm like not one of those
Mhm,
authors that has like, 10 books written as a like on the backlist burner or
mhm,
whatever. So I kind of take ideas as they come. I love like light magical elements. I'm like a big fanfic reader. So there's so many like
mm,
fanfic tropes that I would love to play with. So I think, yeah, if the trends towards like paranormal and all that stuff continue, I would love to do that. I think that's super fun. Um,
mhm,
yeah, and you never know. I mean, the one that I'm working on now, I think, has almost some romantic suspense vibes, but it's also a
ooh,
comedy.
mhm.
So I think I'm just going to continue to do weird things that don't maybe make sense to anyone but me and hope for the best.
Hey, it
Um,
makes it like I think all your readers who read your two books like trust you now. Like the premise is like you're like, wait, like what, Rosie? Like, hold on, wait. And like I read a lot of indie romance and I've seen some things and like these books I'm like, I didn't think like what? Like I was like,
yeah,
where are you coming up with these ideas? So I was like,
I
I
don't
love them
know.
so much. And I'm like, I'm gonna eagerly waiting your next book. Like
Thank
I will
you.
definitely be trying to find a way to get an arc once they're available. I'm like, hey Rosie, like, do you have arcs of this book? I'm like ready to read it right now. I'm typically an audiobook listener, but like for books that I just really want to read, I'm like, okay, I need this now. Like I need this now. I will find a way.
Yes. Well, hopefully we'll have print arcs again in the post-pandemic
I know,
world.
dynamic.
So by 2022, hopefully they'll still be like printing stuff out. So that'll be something to
I
look
hope
forward
so
to because
too.
I've never had print arcs. The pandemic stole that from me.
Oh,
So
oh no.
I know
And your
stuff to look
covers
forward to.
are so and your covers are so pretty. Like they're so amazing for
Aw.
these books. Like they kind of like mess with your head because like they're steamier than like what they actually seem they are. They're like the roommate with like the pink cover
I
and the little and the
know.
little
It
couch.
looks
You're like,
like
oh,
so
you think like this
sweet.
is gonna be like a cute?
Although I will say that I think that my stories, somebody said this to me and I put it in my bio because I love it. Basically, like sweet stories spicily told. Like, I think I have like
Mm-hmm.
sweetness. It's just also tends to be high heat. But I don't think, again, I don't think those things are at odds. I think you can have both.
Mm-hmm.
But I totally understand. Like, the illustrated cover thing is like romance loves to debate it. But yeah, I don't know. Read
Mm-hmm.
the back cover if you want to know what the heat is about. There's like
I'm
thinly
like,
veiled self pleasure innuendos in the back copy of The Roommate. So people who are like, oh God, I thought this was YA, like, did you? I don't know.
it's like I feel so bad for someone who picks up the Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang, thinking it's like a summer contemporary. I was like, no, 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 no. I picked
You're,
up that book on a whim. Didn't know anything about it. I was like, oh, what?
yeah, there's definitely some illustrated covers that have high heat books in the
Mhm.
pages. So I don't know. I don't have easy answers for like how people can diagnose, which I know is like a hot button issue. So
Yeah, I was very curious. I like love the covers. They're so like visually striking. But then like when I saw the roommate, I was like, this is like signaling to me like very cutesy romance, but then I read them like, oh, there's a scene. I think everyone knows like in your books there's like one like definitive scene that everyone talks about. There's a
well,
mutual
I didn't
scene that
know that.
happens in the roommate,
Oh boy.
and then
Okay.
that's how everyone I haven't read the book yet, but everyone was like talking about there's a scene you got to read in the book. And I was like, what
Oh
scene?
boy. Okay.
And
Noted.
everyone was like, oh wow. I was like, and then like in the
Yeah.
interview experiment, I was like, oh okay, Rosie, I see you, I see you. Like
Yeah. They.
watching the tape, I was like, I love this so much.
Yeah. No. I always. I really like high heat in like what I read. Like to me,
Mhm.
that's something I look for in as like a culmination of the dynamics in romance. So yeah, I love including it. And I think it's different. You know, it's how it serves the story. Like The Roommate
Mhm.
is a book about sex. Like they're learning about it. They're building a company around it. The intimacy experiment, it has less of a focus, but you know, I like to think that those scenes can get dialed up just as much as the ones in The Roommate.
Mhm. Oh yeah, that's really cool. And I wanted to ask you too. You mentioned that you may potentially think about going indie for Wynn's book. Do you ever want to be like a hybrid author and do some indie work as well?
Yeah, I would totally. I mean, it's so much work. Like, I
Hmm.
admire so much these authors that are out here doing every single step of the process and like killing it, just
I
slaying.
mean, I'm releasing like multiple books a year. I'm like, how do
Oh
you do
my gosh, I
this?
know. I can't. Honestly, I cannot wrap my head around it. So,
Mhm.
it's definitely something I would love to do. I think like there's some stories I want to tell that might not be best served by traditional publishing. So, yes, I think it's a sort of like a matter of when is the right time to go
Mhm.
hybrid. And I no immediate plans because mostly because it seems like so much work and I can barely do what
Mhm.
I'm supposed to for these contracted books. Um, but I just admire indie authors so much, and yeah, I would love
Mhm.
to get in there.
That's cool. And I guess it's like I warned you a little bit of this question beforehand. So, what are some of your favorite romance books? You can either do books or authors. It can be
Yeah,
all-time favorites or things that you have loved recently in the past year.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, April 6th, when the intimacy experiment came out, was a really good date for like book drops. So I have to
Yeah, this is a
recommend
lot.
yeah, Sarah Hoggle, who is also a sophomore author. I loved her debut. I read an arc of her debut like forever ago, and I just think she has such a fresh, sharp voice. And so her book just came out on the same day, Twice Shy, and
Mhm.
I loved it. It's like such an easy read. It's about um, a woman who inherits an estate and she goes out and finds out that she has a co-inheritor who's like a grumpy groundskeeper, and it's very
Ooh.
very romantic in like a traditional sense. So
Mhm.
definitely check that one out if you're looking for a new release
Uh-huh.
that just came out. Actually this Tuesday, so um I don't know when this will air, but April 13th, Hot Copy by Ruby Barrett comes out. This is when I got to read in advance as well. Ruby's a friend of mine,
Mhm.
and it's like a fresh take on an office romance. It's the boss is a
Ooh.
woman and it's her male intern. So there's like some interesting power dynamics, but I think Ruby really
Ooh.
navigates them super well. And that one is very high heat. So if you're like, oh, I feel like there's not enough high heat contemporary romances, that one has like 9 sex scenes or something. So check that out.
Don't hype me up, Rosie. Like I'm gonna go buy this book
You need
now.
to. It comes out very soon, so get that pre-order in. But that one's great. And then I love Jodie Slaughter. Speaking of indie authors,
She's
White Whiskey
amazing.
Bargain, like took me to another planet. It is so good.
Mhm.
And Jodie just had another one, To Be Alone with You, that just dropped pretty recently. And then she just signed a big traditional deal as well. So I'm super
Mhm.
excited to see what those books look like. So another author that you can kind of dive into, really, really recommend Jodie.
Yeah, Jodie's amazing. Have you read All Things Burned by her?
No,
Her
I haven't read
Hitman
that one yet.
romance?
Good.
That's oh my goodness, that one is so good. I
She's
read all
super
of her books.
talented.
Like she's amazing, and she writes from White Whiskey Bargain to All Things Burned. They're like completely two different books, but yet they're so good. Like I
She's so
oh my goodness,
talented.
when you said that, I was like, there's a reason why I like your books. I'm like, we have similar taste in authors. And also I wanted to ask you too. It mentions in your author bio that you're a fan of Chopped.
Yes, I love cooking competition shows.
I am a Food Network junkie. Like I
Yeah.
have Food Network on running in the background. I think I've seen so many episodes of Chopped. I can predict like all the rules. I'm like, okay, you missed an ingredient. Sorry, you got eliminated. So I was like, when I saw
Right.
that, I was like, I had to ask you just about like your love of Chopped. This was like that's like just me being a nerd and nerding out.
Yes, no, I love reality competition shows of all kinds. Like I'm also really into like Survivor. I do that whole thing.
Hmm.
But yeah, Food Network, OG, like really invested in like
Hmm.
the Bobby Giada, will they, won't
Hmm.
they, sexual tension. Love Chopped. I do feel like I have a weird resourcefulness in the kitchen where like if
Hmm.
like I'm not a huge recipe person, I'm kind of like, what do we got going on, like let me try it out.
Hmm.
So yeah, I've obviously never been on Chopped, but I feel like I would do well if I ever got to go on.
That's amazing. I feel like I would fail horribly because I would see the basket and like, I don't know what to do with any of this. Let me order takeout and present
That's
that to the
how
judges.
somebody asked me actually one time, which I thought was a really good question. It was a book blogger I love, Nick of the Books is her blog, but she asked me like, what would your characters do on Chopped? Because she had also read my bio, and she was like,
Hmm.
what would like Josh, Clara, and Naomi, who would win if they were on
Naomi
Chopped?
will win. I
Well,
feel like
no,
Naomi,
because
hands
Naomi does
down.
not cook. That is like a core part of her character. So I literally was like, Naomi would be like, I choose not to participate. Just like sit there, like chomp on some vegetables or whatever was in the basket and be like, you can do whatever. I am not a part of this. Um, and Josh like has terrible taste. He has like like the palate of like a 12-year-old.
Yep.
So he would definitely not win. So Clara sort of like wins by default. Not that she's like actually good at it necessarily, but I feel like she has eaten at a lot of nice restaurants. She would have like a little bit more sophisticated palate. So that was
Hmm.
a really fun question though, to think about.
Oh, that's really cool. And like, what would you say is your favorite besides Chopped of the Food Network shows? Are you like a Beat Bobby Blake fan? Are you like the Christmas baking shows?
I like Beat Bobby. I like love to hate watch Bobby Flay for sure.
Hmm.
Um, so I can get behind Beat Bobby Flay, except I don't like it when he wins. Like I need the people to take him down. Um, what else? You know what my favorite was, which has not aired in many years, and maybe
Hmm.
is because I'm an old, you might not know what this is, but um, were you ever around for Thanksgiving Live when the Food Network would host that? They would
Hmm.
get they would get like all these different personalities and they would cook like
Hmm.
a big Thanksgiving dinner. I
Hmm.
loved that because it was unscripted and they would just get drunk and like act wild with each other. Like there's one
Yeah.
year where Giada like chopped her own finger because she was drunk. Like it was great. I like the drama. I like the interpersonal dynamics as well as the cooking.
Like I love the drama too. Like when you said Bobby and Giada, I was like, wait,
They have so
I
much sexual
see that.
tension.
And
They
they have a show together now, I think.
I have not watched it, but I've heard it is outrageous.
But I remember my favorite is Worst Cooks in America.
Oh no,
I love
that
how there's
stresses me
always a
out.
contestant that like always likes to hit on Bobby.
Oh
It's so
gosh, is there? Oh dear. I can't watch any of like the worst cook stuff or like cooks versus cons because it just makes me
Mhm.
like I don't know, uncomfortable. Like I get secondhand embarrassment or something. Like I couldn't do that on TV. So I
Yeah.
respectfully decline to view that, but yeah, I don't know. I think Bobby Flay is like such a weird person. I have a lot of feelings about Bobby Flay. They're complicated and intense.
I feel like just like you, everyone has a fascination with Bobby Flay. Like he has so many random shows
He
where people,
does.
out of all the chefs, everyone wants to be Bobby Flay.
Very
Which I was like,
watchable.
this
Very punchable
is.
face.
And then my final question for you is, what have been some of your top three favorite movies or TV shows that you've been enjoying the past year, if you have watched anything?
Yes. So I recommend Ted Lasso for anyone for quarantine viewing. It's
Mm-hmm.
on Apple's streaming service, which is random, but find it online. It's worth it. What else have I been watching? This is not like a universal rec, but it's what I've been watching in honesty.
Hmm.
The Challenge on MTV they just put all the seasons on that new streaming service Paramount Plus. I love it. I
Mm.
really love it. Um, what else? And I'm really enjoying like the Disney Plus content. Like I watched
Mm.
WandaVision, had a great
WandaVision.
time. I know people are like polarized by Marvel, but you know, if you can find I find a lot of comfort in it. Those people have been in my life for a long time. How long they've been making Marvel movies? Like 15 years or something at this point?
Yeah, something like that.
Long
Yeah.
time. So I like that too.
Oh yeah, I haven't watched the newest one, The Falcon. I was like, I'm
Oh
gonna
yeah,
wait.
I'm behind.
I'm I'm
So
gonna
we
wait till
can't
they
talk
all
about it.
are available. I was like,
That's good. Yeah.
I was like that on that weekly with WandaVision, and like I got into all the theories, and then the season finale was, I was like, couldn't Agatha won, and then just like defeated Scar. Unpopular opinion, the whole Agatha All Along song was like,
Very
I
fun.
loved it. I loved it so
Very
much.
good. Very catchy. Would be a good ringtone or something.
Hmm. But thank you so much, Rosie, for coming on my channel. It was amazing talking with you. And if anyone watching this video wants to like find her on all her social media links and also wants to buy the copy of the roommate or the intimacy experiment, all those links will be down below. So you can get just one click and then you can go to Amazon and purchase your, because it's available on ebook, paperback, and audio as well.
Yeah.
And thank you again so much, Rosie, again for coming on my channel. And I'll catch you guys with a brand new video. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for having me. Bye.